Hello, welcome to the Wolfi community call. It is November 30th, 2022. Really quick welcome we have two new maintainers on the Wolfi project. So Batuhan and Furkan, welcome. If you're interested in getting involved with and becoming a maintainer on something, reach out to one of the maintainers and we'll try to work something out and get you onboarded if everything makes sense. Today we have a couple of demos, one from James and one from Adolfo. James, you wanna start talking about the CLI?
Yeah, sounds good. All right, cheers, Josh. Okay, so been looking just the last few days at one of the challenges we've got at the moment is we've got a load of Melange configs in Wolfi OS repo. We want to keep all of these packages up to date. So what we've started to look at is some kind of form of automation to go to check when there's new package versions available, upstream code is available, releases are available, and then create a pull request onto Wolfi OS that we can review and trigger CI and checks and everything, so we can ultimately have like a nightly cron almost, so we can actually keep up to date our Wolfi packages up to date with upstream releases. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen. We've been talking about a few kind of CLIs that we're starting to work with interact with Wolfi repositories and Wolfi in general. So we've just created, just today, a new repo in Wolfi dev called Wolfi CTL. This is going to be useful for adding in certain commands, certain subcommands to help build up certain automation and tooling and linting and various other ideas that we've kind of had, and some new commands going forward to helping out with Wolfi. So the first command, this is still early days as well, but the first command we've got in here is, go to the docs, an update command. So Wolfi CTL update command. I'm just going to talk through this a little bit quickly. Even got a diagram in there, so that was managed to squeeze that in last minute. But the idea with these packages is there is we want to query a service, or when new packages are available, and there's a cool service called release monitoring over here, which is a service which you can actually you can query it, and you can ask for if a package has new versions. And so we can have a little look at it in a second. But the idea of this Wolfi update command is we're going to use it to create a pull request eventually on our Wolfi OS repository. We need to check some kind of mapping data so that we can kind of map our Wolfi packages to, say, packages in the release monitoring service or other services as well, as we'll dive in and have a look at reasons why we might need that. And ultimately, if there's a new version available for a package, then we want to create a pull request. So a couple of things to take with that. We've seen the Wolfi OS repo, so if anybody's not familiar, anybody's watching this, we've got a bunch of Melange config files in here. These represent one of our packages, all of our packages. You can see here we've got a package Bison, and it's got a version here. So ultimately, we want to, when a new version of Bison is available, we want to update that version. The other thing we had in here was this mapping data. So if we go to this release monitoring service, let's have a look at this. This is kind of cool. I think it's maintained by the Fedora project. And you can go in here and say, you can search for, say, wget. In wget, you can see, okay, yeah, it's we've got the wget package here. It's saying the most stable release version is 1.21.3. You get some information here. You can also get indication if it's a pre-release as well. With Wolfi, as far as I understand, we're only interested in stable releases, so that's good. We can kind of filter on that. The important thing to call out here is up here, there's the there's a project ID. That's the thing that's used to query the service, the release monitoring service, to see if there's new versions available using their API. So we kind of needed some form of mapping to say, okay, for our service, for our Wolfi package wget, what is the project code, the project ID on release monitoring org that we need to use to query for new release versions. So this is kind of a temporary approach. We can probably look at where this data really belongs. Maybe it belongs in large config files. I don't know. But for now, it's just a little Git repository. And I've just gone through and did a manual querying the service and just got the project ID identifier for each of these package names. Some with a bit more complex. Let's say cosine wasn't in there. Maybe we could get cosine added in there. But a little bit more on that in a second. Certain ones we want to skip would maybe our package versions are a little bit different, maybe the different format or something like that. So there's a few in here that I've actually said, let's just skip this for now. Let's not bother actually querying for a new version update on this. We'll need to manually look at these and enhance this automation over time. And so you can see for each of our packages, we've got this project ID. Now, the last thing I'd say on that is one service. I'm sure there's going to be other services. Ooh, there we go. I'm sure there's going to be other services as well. I just want to take one example. I was looking at Jenkins, for example, because I was thinking we could just use the GitHub API for latest versions of certain things, say Crane, Cosine, Jenkins, hello. But just as an example, this Jenkins released, they have a latest release of, this was 8 hours ago, 2.375.1. That's marked as the latest on GitHub. Incidentally, that's not, I don't believe that is the latest. It was, 2.380 was actually released yesterday. I think that's the latest. So we don't always want to necessarily use the GitHub API to work out latest. There might be something we could do in the future, and I was just playing around with the GitHub GraphQL API. My point being is, this mapper here, it doesn't have to just be using the release monitoring org. We may want to use other things to be able to query for latest updates of versions for our packages. All right, let's just drop into a demo. So we've got our new Wolfi kubectl. I've got that locally. Let me see if I can. Where is my terminal? Here we go, hiding. Okay, so I've been working, I've got a fork of Wolfi OS repository. So I'm going to run this updater against my fork. Yes. Let's just go and make this here. Under the, if we have a quick look at the commands, you can see the Wolfi update command has a few arguments. You can change the pull request title and couple of other things, options that we've got here. I'm going to point it at my fork of Wolfi. I'm going to change the title to be a non-standard one because we don't want to merge this. We're just doing some testing at the moment. I've got a cut down version of this mapper at the moment. So I'm using this one here, this test one, with just these 4 packages or 5 packages, just as I don't want to be hitting and hammering that service. It's actually rate limited on the client side as well. So we're not, I think, one request or a couple of requests a second. We'll be good citizens. Now that has finished. It's gone and taken, it's cloned my fork of the Wolfi OS repository into a temporary directory locally. It's then gone and checked all the mappings for all of our packages. It's gone over to the release monitoring service to check if there's a new version available. It's then actually passed on to, I think you'll probably recognize this, melange bump. So it does a melange bump for that package, and it then pushes that onto a branch of my fork, and creates a pull request. So if we go and have a look at this pull request, so we now see this is what was just created by the command. We can go and have a look, and we can see that 2 were actually updated, and we can see the changes here, and the CI is going to trigger. So that's it. But there are some things that we still need to do. We need to validate the mappings, make sure that all of these are correct. You'll notice that for the keen eye, I think one of these actually failed. I think some of our Melange config files don't always use the package version template in the fetch URL. So there might be some updates we need to do. I think there was a failure in one of these. So here we go, not found when fetching the updated. Oh, that was it. I think they've changed for this libx renderer. It's not. It's a tar GZ, not tar B2Z2 anymore. So we want to kind of be able to extract out any failures and kind of capture them, or maybe Slack them, or put them into logs and things like that. But yeah, that was it. I mean, any questions? No
that
questions?
was awesome. That was awesome. Cool. Also, we were talking earlier, the Wolfi CTL or Wolfi Cuddle repo could be a good home for all sorts of different automation. So I think at the beginning, he was mentioning linting and things like that. So this could be a good home for things like that. All right. Thank you, James. Adolfo, do you want to talk about Melange SBOMs?
Sure. And also welcome, Apu. Nice to have you here. Let me see if I can share this window. Yep. Okay. There it is. So I'm gonna go into the. Can you hear me? I'm gonna go into the container running the Melange repository. This is a container running a Wolfi base, which mounts the Melange repository for testing purposes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to run a build of OpenSSH. This is the OpenSSH configuration that was copied from Wolfi. It's just the same one, and it already so the SBOM support in Melange already forked, so we should be able to build this and get SBOM for all the APK packages. So when this runs, what it's gonna do is it's gonna compile OpenSSH and its different APKs, and each of the APKs is now going to have an SBOM inside of it. And the reason why we want to have this is because we are going to be enriching these SBOMs with as much information as we can from the build environment, from the because since Melange is running and it has complete visibility into what is executing and the dependencies it's pulling in, we can get pretty detailed SBOMs. And so once we have the SBOMs in the APKs, we're going to be stitching them together into the images SBOMs. So when you create an image with APKO, you're not only going to have the list of system packages in the SBOM, but you're also going to be able to go down deeper into the APK SBOMs themselves, which are going to be compiled into the same one. So right now it's built, and if I take one, for example, this one, and I look inside of the APK, it now includes an SBOM inside of that. So if we extract that file, you should see that the SBOM is already built. So we can take a look at how the SBOM looks. See what the information it included, to see the information Melange included in it. So this is the structure of the SBOM. We have one package describing the APK itself, and right now we only have the list of files. Hopefully those files are going to be indexed and checked correctly, and we are still in the process of adding more. So the first step was wiring SBOM generation into Melange, which is done. And now the next one is going to be enriching those SBOMs with dependency information, licensing, parsing of the supplier, and as much information as we can from them. We also, by generating the SBOMs in Melange, we also can get a complete list of the build dependencies. That is the tools used to build the APKs. And once we have them, the next, so that's inside of Melange. Then the next step downstream in APKO is going to be when we build the image SBOM, we're going to stitch together the image SBOM with the information from the APK SBOMs. And on the other side, upstream, we are connecting this to the open SBOM generator language parsers, which actually Apu did some work on, which we're currently fixing to get them to a decent enough state that we can reuse them. And those are Go modules that inspect certain ecosystems like Gradle, like Cargo, and give you the information about the project, which we're going to be including in these SBOMs once we get it together. So that's basically it. The direct implication for Wolfi is that now that we have SBOM generation in Melange, all of the Wolfi packages are going to have SBOMs as soon as they're rebuilt. Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah. So my question is, looking at the APK layout, right? It was in like bar or something SBOM, right? The SBOMs. Is that so? Does that get when you does that mean the SBOMs all get copied into the image as well as into like a separate SBOM image like entity in the repository?
Yeah. So the SBOM is going to be included inside of the APK. That means when you build the image, the SBOM is going to go and live inside of the file system of the image.
Okay. When you do like an APK install, it'll get copied into the file system of the image.
Exactly. So what we were discussing is that these SBOMs have this particular limitation, which is in the package. Let me find it. Okay, package. Yeah, this is the package. So if you see, the package doesn't have any checksums because we cannot add a checksum, because since the SBOM is going inside of the package, you cannot know the hash that the APK is eventually going to have. But what you have is the verification code, which is a checksum of all the file checksums inside of inside of the package. Okay.
So earlier you mentioned that you plan to capture information about the build environment into the SBOM, which makes a lot of sense. What do you think about, since the fact that we never delete packages in Wolfi, like even when we upgrade versions, what do you think about having like a Melange reproduce command that takes a YAML file plus an SBOM to try to reproduce a package build based on the versions that are captured from the build environment from the SBOM.
I think it's cool. I don't know. I think just as a verification that we're doing the right thing, it's going to be really useful. Yeah, we should definitely try it.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, that's it from me. Apple.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Apu. No, we still can't hear you. Send it in the chat, maybe.
All right, Apu, if you end up coming back, we'll come back to you. Ariadne, you had an item about FOSDEM?
Yeah, it was announced earlier today that there is a FOSDEM distributions dev room, and basically, I think that we should try to submit some proposals for talks about Wolfi to the FOSDEM dev room. So that's all I was going to say.
Is it? I've never been. Is it all solo talks, or do you pair with people?
I believe you can do either either way. Like you can have like multiple people give a talk at FOSDEM, or you can do it solo.
Yeah, I think it's pretty liberal. Each room can decide the format. I'm organizing the SBOM room, and currently there's no limit on how many people can present, and talks are limited to 15 and 5 minutes, lightning talks. But we need to check on the rules for that particular one.
Yeah, I mean, just
All right.
I think transparently it'd be neat to find if there are people outside of the Chain Guard organization that want to pair on a talk or do something like that. So if there's anyone out there who's using Wolfi and wants to go to that conference, that could be really neat. All right, that's all we had on the agenda. Did anybody want to say anything, introduce themselves, or ask anything about Wolfi? Otherwise, we can call it early today.
That's a good question. We have considered the consequences of ABI breakages when doing updates, and the answer that we're
quick,
coming up with.
I just want to repeat the
that-
question for the video recording. So Apu asked in the chat, for the auto updater, are there any considerations for breaking changes that will break all builds if a dependency is updated? Hence Debian 10, 11, Ubuntu 2004, 2204, etc.
All right. So yes, we are monitoring for ABI breakages when we do any sort of CI step. That's not quite integrated into the CI yet, but there is a work item to have the CI verify that there isn't any unaccounted for ABI breakages before like anybody can push a button to actually make an update happen. So the idea is that if like an SO name changes, we go back and rebuild everything that's dependent on the SO name. And then hopefully all of that works fine. But yes, if the ABI break also means an API break, then yes, patches are necessary. And in those cases, the CI job will fail and that particular update will have to be, handled manually. But we're hoping that most of the time the updates will be quiet and we won't get updates that have to be handled manually. Hopefully that explains the question, or hopefully that's a good explanation.
Interesting. I actually missed the comments when I was doing the demo initially. I think, Ariadne, you mentioned that data could live in the Melange configs. I was thinking the same thing. It'd be good to have them when we contribute a Melange config into Wolfi, kind of point to what service is keeping it up to date. So we don't have that. Wouldn't have the need for that mapper repo. I think there was one more as well you mentioned. I had a look at that repology. I'm not sure it's particularly maintained. There was a batch exporter service that was talked about and didn't work. I've raised an issue. I haven't had anything back, and I've got the feeling it's maybe not many people, maybe one person's actually maintaining that. But we can certainly have another look at it. But when I did try, it wasn't working. I couldn't get any information out of it.
Apu had another question about the updater. Can the updater be adjusted to track only minor or bug fix releases, or do we want to be as far up on head as possible? Ultimately, it depends on what package we're tracking, because some packages you can be reasonably stable and be up on head, and then other packages like OpenSSL, changing the version can be a nightmare. So I think that the way that this is going to have to work is that each YAML file specifies the update policy that we want the updater to take. And that's definitely something that we will probably implement in the near future, especially before just letting it rip on the repository unsupervised, So
similar to that is also the packages that have almost like a version stream. So, for example, we have like Java 11, Java 17, we'll probably have Java 19, and so we don't want to just bump the latest. So we need to follow each stream, each major version stream, similar for Ruby, Node, and other things as well. At the moment, those ones I'm just skipping in that updater. It would be good to try and get something working. And if we can get like 70% of the easy ones done, and get that automation going through and build a confidence and try and tackle some of the more complex scenarios whilst manually keeping them up to date until we get that good confidence of automation for the more complex approaches.
I can imagine like combining those two things where you can like pin to the higher order elements of the version, go from there. Yeah.
I've also seen there's some really interesting approaches to versioning with dates and all kinds of things in some as well. So there may be some, as we go through, maybe some kind of rules or some kind of patterns or regexes or something like that we might need to try and do to get it to work really well. But yeah, it's certainly, hopefully early on we can get a quick win, and then over time just build up more and more for these more complex approach scenarios.
Okay, Trevor asks about whether or not there's an update on ARM64. And the answer is that yes, ARM64 is coming very soon. We have done a lot of work in the past 2 weeks to get everything ready for doing the actual ARM build, and now we are about to proceed with doing the actual ARM build. And once that's done, we will have regular ARM builds alongside the x86 ones. We have to integrate that new build system that we built to support the ARM builds into GitHub Actions. If you track, there's a branch in our Bootstrap repository, the stage 1, where you can see the integration of the new build system to support building the x86 and ARM packages in parallel. So basically, in the past few weeks, we've added conditional support to Melange, which allows us to download x86 or ARM binary artifacts to be used in bootstrapping. We've done a lot of work on DAG, the new build system, and we've done a lot of work to actually facilitate the bootstrapping process in the various YAML files backing the distribution. So the main blocker where we are right now is that Alpine upgraded to GNU Make 4.4, which broke our build for the Bootstrap repositories. So we're going to update the Bootstrap repositories to use a newer glibc version that is compatible with GNU Make 4.4. And once that's done, we should be able to bootstrap, and then we should be able to go into production with builds of the ARM variant pretty quickly, just after doing some very basic validation tests. So the TLDR is it's coming within the next week or two. Is there anything else, or? For Ubuntu, we haven't really done we don't know. Our goal right now is to be mostly ABI compatible with like CentOS Stream, which is tracking Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9, which, if I were to guess, is comparable ABI wise to Ubuntu 22.04, but yeah. Oh, are you talking about GitHub runner images, or because you can actually build in GitHub Actions with Wolfi?
Is that working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Like when you select an image to do a build, I mean, maybe you can select a non-official GitHub runner image.
So what you can do is you can use Ubuntu image, but then you can do container:alpine or container:cgr.dev/shinguard/Wolfi. And that allows you to do a build inside a Docker image instead of inside of the host Ubuntu image. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's a way that you can build on any image that is supported by Docker. So
do we have an example of that somewhere? It might be something that we might want to go ahead and put into docs or something. Like an example.
I do not right off the top of my head, but
I'll jot it down.
yeah, Apu just linked to it. Because like the way that like the proper way, well, that's an opinionated statement, but the way that I would recommend building with Wolfi is to use Melange, which if you use Melange, it starts a container up and does the build in the container anyway. So obviously that's not a good answer for people who are already dealing with like GitHub Actions or something along those lines. So you know, running it in like the Wolfi base :latest or whatever is probably a good alternative. And we can what?
Do you mean that people, I guess, would do a compile of their C application using Melange?
Yeah, and create an APK, and then that traces out all of the dependencies. And then you can just take that over to APKO, and it gives you a nice distroless image that contains only your app and the dependencies, and it uses the package manager to solve all of that for you. That's the easiest way to do it. But obviously, if you have a Docker file already, then or if you have a GitHub Actions build or whatever, then you can make use of Wolfi using the container thing, and we should document that. So I will take that as an AI to do. Well,
All right. Yep. Is there anything else? Nope. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you in 2
have a
weeks.
good
I
one.
think 2 weeks after that is around Christmas time. I'm thinking we should probably cancel and resume in January.
Sounds
So,
good.
All right. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.